Welcome back to Beyond the Tour. We're up to episode number 30, Luke.
Yeah, 30 episodes in, Jake. We're racking them up fast and furiously. Hard to believe that we're at 30, but been a fun ride so far.
Yep. Now this, we're just sort of finished the Australian Open, so we're 2/3 of the way through the Aussie major season, with the third leg of that major season being the biggest of all, Live Adelaide.
A very controversial take there, and not something that the PGA of Australia or Golf Australia would like to hear you comment on.
Well, certainly something I think it's a bit of a blind spot for particularly Golf Australia, because by the sounds of things, there's no money or sponsorship that's available for the Open.
No, and obviously a lot of controversy over the weekend about the Australian Open and both the format of the event and also the conditions of the course there at Kingston Heath. Is that where you want to start today?
Why not? I think so. So I think number one, we have a new Ryggs in town. It looks like there's a Ryggs Johnston as the winner and is now probably the undisputed best Ryggs in golf at the moment.
Yeah, I really thought it was a piss take when I heard that he'd been named after Mel Gibson's character from the Lethal Weapon series.
Yeah.
But apparently not. So Ryggs, eat your heart out.
Reasonable leaderboard. It was sort of fun for the best part of the front nine yesterday with a fair few Aussies in the mix. Curtis Luck probably sort of rocketing a little bit towards the top there and looked to be our best chance coming down the stretch. But none of them were able to sort of keep pace with Ryggs, and all made mistakes at certain points.
Yeah, as you say, Curtis Luck looked like most likely, didn't he, to sort of wrestle it away from Ryggs, and he grabbed a share of the lead there. But you've got to hand it to Johnston. He really produced under pressure coming down the stretch there, and incredibly, this is on a golf course that he'd never seen before, and he even didn't get to play a practice round on it due to the inclement weather down in Melbourne. So a very unlikely winner. He was in the 900s in terms of his world ranking. So it was a surprising winner, but a deserved winner nonetheless, because, as you say, the leaderboard had some really good names on it, and particularly on Saturday there, where you've got Joaquin Niemann shooting 8 under and coming hard. He did well to sort of hold off in the end.
He did. So obviously he's come off. He's qualified for the DP World Tour at Tour School a couple of weeks ago, and he's won in his second tournament. I think that sort of highlights the benefit of being able to play or get reps in at the time that you qualify for a particular tour. You've got no time to cool off. If you're on a particularly hot run at the time, which in most cases, those qualifying for tour schools are in form, and that form may not last as long as a long time. I think we've sort of discussed a little bit the fact that it's a little bit, in my opinion, lopsided that the KFT guys get their cards in October and then don't play until essentially February on the PGA Tour.
100%. And the saying about form being temporary is very true in that regard. You could be in hot form finishing the KFT finals, and then by the time you actually get your chance on the PGA Tour, you might have run a bit cold. So no doubt they would much prefer the sort of transition that Ryggs has had, where Q school straight into events and get you a shot. But not the way it's set up at the moment on the PGA Tour.
How did you see the Aussie Open on TV? Did you tune in to a lot of it?
I did. I watched enough of it to know that the coverage was pretty poor. Really, I found it really one-dimensional in terms of. I think you largely saw the final two group of the men's and maybe one group of the women's, and there's so much better golf being played across the field that just focusing on those routinely without any sort of, lifting your head up above the clouds to actually see what's going on, it was really quite disappointing.
Yep.
In terms of the commentary, aside from Ali Whitaker, it was pretty poor, stale, and not sort of very engaging. and the camera work at times was really just very amateurish. And look, I think that probably speaks to the lack of depth that we have in Australia around experienced camera operators in a golf context, but it really does sort of stand out when you're watching it and you're seeing, that they're not able to see where the ball, they can't find the ball in the air, let alone find it where it actually finishes. And you're seeing these shots and just no context of what the actual outcome is.
Yep. I'd have less sort of, I'm less critical of those sort of aspects, as you say. We get 2 or 3 chances a year, maybe a few more with the PGA of Australasia events as well. So I'm less critical of the reps these guys put in and the quality of commentary from that perspective. More critical of the fact that they've already got limited resources and they're trying to cover 2.5 events. And that makes it very, very hard to cover any of them in any depth as well. So as you say, we're pretty much hard locked on a couple of groups, and despite lots of action going on across the 3 tournaments, they weren't able to adjust and put a light on some of these guys to sort of, I guess, throw down some interesting narratives, which it was hard to watch.
Yeah, your point's well made about there being too much to try and cover, and I guess when there's too much, you just pick something and you stick with it, and that's certainly what happened. But you miss some of the big storylines. So I mentioned Joaquin Niemann on Saturday, shooting 8 under, defending champ, racing up the leaderboard, and we didn't see anything of him. Now, he probably justified that decision in the end because on Sunday he got stuck in neutral and shot an even par round and didn't really trouble the leaders at all. But when you got someone that can go low like him, an international player of serious reputation, you've got to be showing him on the coverage, right?
Well, even like someone yesterday, like a Kiradek, an Appy Banrat, had a decent rounds. He was pretty hot, and we didn't see a lot of him. And obviously, like it's probably, I guess the whole issue sort of centers around the fact that we got 3 events jammed into one. Apparently because of funding reasons, essentially, or the fact that the men don't like the format, they like the dates. The women apparently don't love the dates but like the format. So, and with Sutherland or James Sutherland coming out yesterday and saying that it's not something that can be unwound very easily, I don't know, it's perplexing to me.
Yeah, and Evan Priest wrote quite well on the issue, covering off all the different dynamics that are going on. And as you say, sort of the men don't like the format, and the women kind of do, because it gives them a chance to sort of get more exposure than they may otherwise would have. But Sutherland sort of has come out and said, well, the role of the governing body is to balance the concerns of the game, concerns of the game's best players, along with financial realities, and that, decisions about future tournaments and whether it would remain in Victoria haven't been made yet. So those negotiations and discussions, particularly with the Victorian government, probably going to be held pretty shortly so that planning for the next year's event can happen. But I did read a comment from Sutherland in some of the reporting, and I've got to say he sounded a lot like Big J Monahan when I was reading it. So, his comment here, the simple solution would be to separate the men and women and let's go back to great events like that. But it's not quite that easy because there are a lot of very, very important stakeholders who bring this event together and make it economically viable, financially sustainable, and also sustainable in terms of getting the outcomes we want. That's straight out of the PGA Tour CEO playbook, isn't it?
It certainly is. This, to me, just thinking about it, has to be women's side related, because obviously they had a really good run where it was sanctioned with the LPGA in South Australia. And the event drew pretty good fields. This particular event had a field of 85 women, and it had good right at the top. There was relatively strong at the top of the field, but it dropped away very fast. So you've got to think that functionally the Women's Australian Open is probably the one that couldn't survive if it was going out on its own.
Well, I guess you say that, but then equally we've seen men's events, very, very popular men's events not survive, like the Aussie Masters. It's incredible to me to think that event no longer exists, given the the interest and the branding that it had. It was just so synonymous with the Aussie golfing calendar. So to see that disappear, it's certainly been very disappointing. I did see Matty Guyatt, former PGA player, making some comments on X about this, and his two favourite events are the Aussie Summer or the Aussie golfing calendar, the Australian Open and the Masters, and one of them's gone and the other one's on life support, and you got to ask the question, why is that? And I think it's probably going to be multifactorial.
Yep.
No doubt the PGA Tour fall season has had a significant role to play in damaging a local tour like that and some flagship events, because it takes away from the international talent that's ready to travel. So certainly that's got to be a contributing factor. But you just also got to wonder how much of it comes down to management and, lack of vision on the behalf of the game's governing bodies.
I don't know if there's an easy solution. I think this is great. They've done a really good job of giving access to the DP World Tour. I think that's good that it's co-sanctioned. So the winner getting essentially the DP Tour card if they didn't already have one. And also the Open position. So three positions into the Open. I think that's really good. That's a positive for young Aussies potentially who would play well. Obviously, this event saw Mark Leishman and Curtis Luck earn those other two spots outside of Ryggs, which is great. So that's been fantastic. But there's been obviously a few approaches, I believe, from the Asian Tour and LIV. That seems the most logical, from my perspective, route to take to sort of form closer ties with the Asian Tour, and in particular try and maybe get an international series event down here.
Yeah, I know that's certainly been something that Andrew Kirby's been pushing hard for online on X, but I just wonder whether these two major men's events are going to almost have a bit of fortune land in their lap now that we've got reports out that the PIF is negotiating
with
a deal to sort of join LIV and the DP World Tour in some sort of arrangement or partnership, and so that may end up being more fortuitous and come to fruition quicker than if they had have gone the Asian Tour route. So I think the Asian Tour route theoretically was probably the right option to be exploring. But now with this recent development, I wonder whether in practice it may have actually been counterproductive. I guess it will depend on how much is in these new reports about the PIF negotiating with the DP World Tour.
Yep. But it doesn't seem like that's been a financial arrangement to the benefit of Golf Australia in terms of that co-sanctioning with the DP World Tour. If it was, you wouldn't be having these conversations about the fact that it's unviable. Now, the other controversial thing surrounding particular Kingston Heath, Victoria, was the softness, the greens of the fairways.
Very unusual to see, I've got to say. And unfortunately, we're seeing less and less opportunity for top-line professional golf to be played on sandbelt courses.
Yep.
And here we get the opportunity to see it at Kingston Heath. I'm not sure how long it's been, but it's been long enough, right? and we see this lush, soft setup that is producing backspin on greens, and it just really was reminiscent of a PGA Tour setup, unfortunately, and not the way Aussie golf is, and certainly not the way that Sandbelt course golf should be played. You're a Victorian. What was your take on it?
I think they certainly came into the week with too much water on them. In the end, I think there was a fair bit of water over the course of the week and the weekend, so they may have played soft regardless. But I think the fact that they were pre-soaked sort of meant that this was the only outcome potentially. So if they'd been given less water, they may have started firm, and whether or not they kept that firmness, I'm not exactly sure. But I think it was a combination of factors. But by the sounds of it, by the sounds of players who were there early in the week, they were super soft before we saw any major rainfall. So either it was either they didn't understand how much rain was going to come, so it was misforecasted, or they've done that purposefully to sort of maybe give them the flexibility of firming them up or keeping them soft. I'm not sure.
Well, Cam Smith wasn't buying the excuses, was he?
No.
In fact, I think he called it bullshit, that that it was rainy conditions which caused the setup of course to be what it was, and there have been plenty of other people online sprouting their opinions that these Sandbelt courses drain just so perfectly that really it had to have been manual adjustments that created such softness, particularly in the greens.
Yeah. I think they even, was it on the Thursday, they were playing ball in hand as well, I believe. That's crazy. Like anywhere down here on the Sandbelt, on the peninsula, you don't play ball in hand anywhere through the year, even winter. It's crazy to hear that they're playing ball in hand. I couldn't believe that.
It's a trigger that's pulled far too quickly in professional golf these days, for fear of the, very occasional mud ball producing an errant shot.
Yep.
I think it's crazy.
Bunkers and a few low-lying areas, completely understand they could have been pretty wet and damp, but just section them off. A little white line and sort of.
Yeah, I mean, you've got casual water rule, right?
Yeah.
And then, as you say, particular bunkers can be ruled out of play or whatnot. So, a very big disappointment in terms of the course setup and course conditions. We always want to see firm, fiery conditions from Sandbelt courses, and unfortunately, we didn't get that this time around.
No, we didn't. Now, on the women's side, there was one by Jia Shin, so that was her second Australian Open. She won by 2 shots. She was looked in control for the majority of the rounds. Anything to say on that one?
Well, 65th career victory, which is pretty incredible, right? She's certainly been an exceptional golfer on the women's side for a very long time, even towards the end of her career or the twilight stages of her career, she's still getting the job done, and skipped out to a 7-shot lead there at one stage, I think, on Sunday. So, as you say, did it easy, even though she only won by 2 shots in the end. That was probably more Ash Buhai making a very late charge, and trying to go for the three-peat, having won the prior 2 Australian Women's Opens, but not to be. Hannah Green looked the goods from an Australian perspective, until a horrid final round 79 really blew her chances. So probably not much else. Just having a look at the other Aussies on the leaderboard there. You've got Grace Kim, Steph Kyriakou and Minjee all sort of finishing top 10. So not too bad, but they were never really in it. If you have a look at where Minjee finished at -3, 14 shots behind. So really, as you sort of talk about, there's a big steep drop off there from the main contenders to the rest of the field.
Yep. Buhai she gets herself into some pretty good form at this time of year.
She loves it in Australia, that's for
Yep.
sure. And she's just got that sort of gritty South African character to her, doesn't she? And it never quits and just grinds it out.
I think that probably wraps up that event. It's good seeing Aussie golf. I went on the Sunday before it rains, and it was entertaining on site. There, the experience is pretty good. The crowds were okay; they were at a reasonable level, I think, for the event and given the conditions. So the on-course experience is pretty good. I think they've done a good job there. Hopefully, they can stay on the sandbelt. I think Sutherland also talked about the ideal situation being a 36-hole property hosting concurrent events versus them sort of sharing the same course, which might give them a bit more flexibility. I don't think that's realistic because there aren't many places on the sandbelt that can be done. Royal Melbourne, probably one. Right? Sorry?
Yeah, Royal Melbourne.
Royal Melbourne. Else there's potentially, I guess, Peninsula Kingswood would be another potential venue for that, but it's not really realistic, I don't think, to be doing that, but that would be ideal.
Yeah, with PK, do you think it's just a touch too far south for the general Melbourne public to get out and support it in the numbers that they would need to?
Probably not. In terms of public transport, it's reasonable there. And obviously, I think if you're looking I won't say majority because I don't know exactly that that's the case, but there is a big portion of the population that lives in that southeast corridor. So I think getting across to Moorabbin is not that much different, sort of coming down from Berwick and sort of the southeast down to Frankston. So I don't think it is too far out. The property itself is certainly large enough. It would be awesome. It'd be a great Australian Open there. Whether or not that would actually be something that could occur, I don't think so. Well, they held, obviously it's they do one leg of the Sandbelt Classic. Is it the Sandbelt Classic? The one that Jeff Ogilvy puts together, and it's a great event there. But so that would be an interesting place to hold a top level tournament.
Yeah, I mean, the National's the other one that springs to mind, but then you're getting right down into the Mornington Peninsula, right?
Yep, and that then we just come down to the fact that Moona Links held the Australian Open at the turn of the century. That property was built for this particular reason, to hold Aussie Opens, and it was just 100%. Too far. It is just too far out. It's down here. It's public transport's the biggest problem. We just don't have it. You've got a few buses that run here and there. Yeah, so they've proved that didn't work economically. So
yeah, so plenty of challenges for the golfing bodies in Australia to solve. That's for sure.
Yep. Asian Tour, Peter Uihlein also controlled that event on the final day. He ended up being a relatively easy winner there. Who did he beat? He beat Charles Schwartzel in the end, was second. Louis Oosthuizen in third, and the Burmeister in fifth. So the Stingers
certainly were representing. I didn't catch too much of this at all, but it did seem that the winds got up and tested the golfers, and Uihlein was able to sort of stay calm and composed, coming home and winning that tournament there in Doha at Doha Golf Club. So that result sees him now take the number one spot on the International Series rankings, which if you're not paying close attention to the Asian series, to the Asian Tour, that is distinct to the actual order of merit rankings, which John Catlin was able to seal the victory on for the order of merit on the Asian Tour. So and he's second on the International Series rankings. So I think the key here is, though, that the winner of the International Series ranking gets themselves a live contract, if I'm not mistaken, unless they're already contracted, and then it goes to no one.
That's right. Yes, exactly right. I think the other key thing here is that Uihlein's win, I think now that's his second International Series victory this year, but it's put it just over the threshold for a one event winner. So I think there was 1,000 points going to the winner of the Saudi International this week. He's on 1,017 or something like that. So it's the winner of the series is going to come from someone who's played two or more events, which is, I think, a good thing.
agree with that totally. Also good to see Jed Morgan just sneak into the top 65, so secured himself a Asian Tour card for next year. He finished T37 in this particular event in Doha, and that was enough to sort of shift him. Was outside the bubble going into the tournament and has finished inside the bubble. So good news for Jed.
And Anthony Kim is now a golfer that has earned OWGR points for the first time in over 12 years.
Yeah, makes the cut in his professional career for the first time in over a decade. So AK, very happy with that, no doubt. And also the reports are that we're going to see him again on Live. So getting that wild card for season 2025 in the Live Golf League.
Yep. I think the promising thing with him is that for the most part, he's not just sort of he's shooting lots of birdies, which I think is a good thing. So generally they say young golfers, and obviously Anthony Kim is not a young golfer, but young up and coming golfers who are making a lot of birdies, they don't care so much if they're making bogeys because that part of the game can be cleaned up. So that's a positive from AK at the moment. He's making a lot of birdies in his rounds, even though he's making just as many bogeys. But it's pretty incredible to think where he is now after 12 months of golf, or not even 12 months. He's like, what is it, like 7 or 8 months of being back. And he's earning points. I know it's not a strong competition, but I think that shouldn't be that accomplishment is pretty impressive. 12 years in the wilderness.
Oh, I don't think people appreciate just how much of an achievement that is. I mean, in the general public, and to come back from what he has experienced during those 12 years, which has been pretty brutal and gruesome, to be able to make a cut. I'm sure he's taking a huge amount of satisfaction out of it. I haven't seen what he's been putting on socials lately. I don't know whether you have, but there was a lot of gratitude being shared in the early stages of him returning to X or coming on to X. So I'm sure he's been very thankful for the results and for having another start next year in Live.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Don't think he's going to make it, but in terms of, I don't think he's going to get back to that winner's circle, but he's progressing, so it'd be great if he could. But I was just comparing it to someone like Gary Woodland, who spent nearly 12 months out of the game, and where he is now, he's sort of struggling to keep a tour card if he didn't have all these exemptions. It's just incredible. The only golfer, I guess, that's been able to come from anything close to this has been Tiger. That's also just as equally as incredible. Like, he doesn't play golf anymore, and he comes and he's competitive for the most part.
Yeah, and it just shows how elite Tiger is. He is in his own class.
Yeah.
Even after the philandering scandals back in the day, where he did take a fair bit of time out of the game, like he came back, and then of course we've had the significant physical injuries that he's had. So to think that he won that Masters is really quite incredible. I certainly had written him off before that, and also the East Lake win that he came back and got. But just shows the elite talent that he has, and the bloody mindedness, really, of his mental focus. It's second to none.
It is. Now, big news over the course of the week is the reporting that the PIF has begun talks with the DP World Tour as separate to the PGA Tour. What did you make of those?
Yeah, I was pretty excited to see it, actually. Firstly, the question popped into my head, well, what does this say about the state of the talks with the PGA Tour? And you and I have been sort of commenting for basically the entire duration of this podcast, 30 episodes deep, that we don't think the PGA Tour can get out of its own way, and we don't really think there's much to be optimistic about in terms of a deal with the PGA Tour. So the PIF are smart negotiators. They're savvy business people. And so this, of course, is, I think, a reaction to those talks either being completely futile or stalled, and Yasser pulling another rein to get the investment that he wants to make.
So they come from Bloomberg, and some of the wording in that was a little bit sort of, it didn't seem like they were right on the ball about it. So they're talking about Liv making the investments versus the PIF. So whether or not this is a little bit of sort of rumors and talk that we've sort of experienced over a couple of months. The other thing I think what really probably highlights to me, if we're assuming that talks are continuing with the PGA Tour and that these talks are separate to those, to me, that probably means that we're not going to see much change from where we are now, from the status quo that we have in golf now, that you'd probably anticipate the major investment going into the Liv product, the PIF investing into the DP World Tour, into the PGA Tour on a much smaller level. And so I don't see too many changes now. I think where we are right this second, we might see maybe I wouldn't call it free flowing. I think maybe some of the fines and whatnot that the bars that currently exist for the Liv guys may fall away, but it looks like this is probably close to the new normal where we are now.
Yeah, there's not a lot of detail about what these negotiations supposedly are focused on. There's some talk of it creating a shared schedule that would allow players to sort of play in events in either league. We've been seeing that in the last few weeks, definitely. And so is that a continuation of what we've already got, or is it a deeper level of crossover and commitment? Time will tell. I do think this has the potential to turn into that global tour that could really rival the PGA Tour, depending on where the negotiations are focused and whether we've got adults in the room, particularly, I think, on the DP World Tour side. Surely they're realising that this strategic alliance with the PGA Tour is doing nothing other than bleeding them of their top talent every year. I'm hopeful that we've got some big wins that might come out of this. So maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic than you. If it did sort of turn into that global tour, which was a legitimate rival to the PGA Tour in terms of, I guess, venues, locations, prize money, status, all that sort of stuff. Do you think McIlroy joins?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a few things that probably have to happen to save face. We're seeing one of them already sort of happening with Scott O'Neill, the potential sort of replacement for Greg Norman. So I think that allows McIlroy to save face because he has always sort of said over his dead body, essentially, would he sort of join with Greg Norman in place
at the helm.
So maybe that sort of gives him a little bit, but I think if he could maybe sort of play bigger events on a DP World Tour or more events on a DP World Tour, it would be sort of interesting. He's already said that he's limiting his schedule on the PGA Tour next year or adjusting it a little bit. So if he maybe plays 10 to 15 events on the PGA Tour, maybe 10 events on the DP World Tour, that might be more of the norm for Rory.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic between Scott O'Neill and the Shark. So we're not 100% sure what's happening with the Shark, but we suspect he's going to transition into some sort of board position. We do know there are reports that the PIF have plans for him, just a different role. I doubt you'd put Scott O'Neill in the patsy category, would you, given his pedigree of having been the former CEO of the 76ers and the New Jersey Devils? Like he comes from a legit sporting pedigree, and I doubt he's going to be just a yes man or a puppet for Norman continuing to run the show at the top. But of course, Greg's got a very healthy ego, and it'll be hard for him to step away from what I'm sure he feels is still his baby.
Yeah, I think he's also 70. He's just on 70 as well. Like he's 70 in 2025. So he's not a young man. So I think that gives him a natural out as well.
Hey, he might be the next Gary player.
Warren Buffett, you think? Overseeing Berkshire at 100.
So yeah, that's an interesting development, something that I'll be certainly keeping a close eye on, because it has the potential to revolutionise the landscape of world golf. It may not do much more than sort of, a little bit of enhancement of what we've currently got, which I think seems to be your perspective on it. But I'm hopeful for more.
Yeah, it's just, I think the probably what's proven, I think we might say SSG. They're probably, to me, they're the ones that have to get paid. Because I hold it. My thought really was the fact that they've probably come in here and then they're playing the typical sort of PE sort of role, where they were essentially helping to facilitate a purchase. Really, that's what their role was. That they were a middleman, basically, to make it sort of smooth it off from the US perspective and the DOJ and all that sort of side of things, and also sort of start to sort of blunt out the impact of the fact that investment was coming into the tour. So to me, they were playing like a typical middleman. They'll come in for a short period of time and get their money back at least, and maybe they maintain a stake in it, but they would have returned their money. So I think they still have to get paid. So I think that's going to happen. I think at some point the PIF are going to have to pay them.
Well, we'll see how that all unfolds. I just don't know whether SSG are going to get back the return they hope.
They probably didn't expect to run into Tiger.
No, Tiger and his cabal.
Yep. Or actually, the other one that's pulling all the strings over on the PGA Tour is the front man, Jay. He's pulled home roughly $23 million in his package, as reported in the 23 financials.
Outrageous, right? Outrageous. $23 million compensation package to arguably the worst chief executive in all of sports, which included a $2.5 million performance bonus.
Well,
I mean, I said on X he should have been docked $12.5 million.
He got $1.5 billion in investment that come in the door. That deserves to be rewarded, doesn't it?
Was it him? Maybe he was frantically, trying to recover his position, and that was the way he saw fit to do it. But anyway, I mean, can you really say that the tour is in a better position now than what it was? I guess maybe 12 months ago, it is in a better position having the SSG investment. But as you say, they're going to want their money. They're going to want to be paid. What does that mean? And the PGA Tour, they don't own the league 100% anymore, do they?
No, that's right. And even though the CIO was brought home $13 million or something as well. So that executive floor it's earning a lot of money on the PGA Tour given the fact that it's a non-profit, not for profit.
Crazy money for a not-for-profit. Normally, wages are far less than what you would get in a commercial entity within a not-for-profit, and so that makes it even more outlandish that Jay's getting what he is getting. So, it's completely disproportionate when you compare to other sports like the NFL and the MLB, what Jay's getting versus the CEOs of those other organisations in different sporting leagues.
Speaking of getting paid, Pat Reed sort of had some comments on the Ryder Cup and the fact that he didn't think they needed to get paid.
Yeah, I kind of, when I read these comments, I thought, well, that's a bit rich coming from someone that took the money to go to live. Did you think the same?
I did, yes, yeah.
But having said that, I do honestly believe that Reed would play 100% for free to get a spot in the Ryder Cup. I think all of the other guys would as well. They've just been able to exert some leverage, probably off the back of Cantlay's comments, to now turn it into a commercial venture for them as well.
Yeah. Jason Day has landed in the Bahamas to play the Hero World Challenge with Tiger not playing.
Yeah, so as we suspected, last time we chatted about the Hero World Challenge, both JT and J Day were not in the entries list, but we speculated that they certainly would find their way into the final few spots. And so that's now been confirmed with both JT and J Day added to the field. Also, I think Nick Dunlap is another entrant there coming through an exemption. So, bit of hit and giggle on the weekend coming. But those two that we thought were going to be in the field, certainly there.
Do you reckon they held back that announcement until Jason was outside of the country, so didn't have to face the Aussie media?
That's a good question. I can understand the logic in that. I'm just not sure that they would care what J-Day's sort of cycle was. They'd release it when they want. But yeah, interesting proposition.
Yep. Bryson made his ace over his house.
Were you enthralled and engaged on this as much as everyone else was?
I wasn't, no. Yeah, I was surprised he made it so quickly, to be honest. Obviously, he's a very good golfer, and he's probably set it at a distance that he absolutely loves. But 134 shots for an ace. Considering if you remember a couple of years ago, the DP World Tour had a few social videos of a few of the guys sitting on a tee box and trying to make an ace inside 1,000 shots, and a couple of them did. I think Andy Sullivan was one of them. Maybe Eddie Pepperell tried it once as well, but I don't think they all made the ace with 1,000 shots. So to see him doing 134 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I wonder what the distance was on the DP World Tour one, but I do kind of remember that. As you say, Bryson would have set this up perfect distance for his wedge. No broken windows and 134 shots, but 0 broken windows. Yeah. There's a lot of glass in that front facade of his house, isn't there?
It's probably all bulletproof.
Yeah. Yep.
I was looking forward to him not making it, and I was actually looking forward to potentially seeing how the challenge ended with him not making a hole in one. So that would have been more entertaining for me.
Did he put a day limit on it?
I don't think so.
So it could have been day 365, and he's hitting 365 wedges over his house.
Yeah. A little bit more we're seeing from TGL. Anything to comment on that?
Look, it's obviously ramping up given the season's going to kick off in January. I'm still not hooked, or it hasn't piqued my interest. Obviously, they're playing the team aspect of it and also the city aspect of it really, really hard. And so we're seeing this flow through in the social media reels and social media promotion that's happening. Most recent one was a pretty cringy kind of stadium side, fireside chat with Billy Horschel, where you've got him comparing, playing in the SoFi Arena to the likes of playing before huge crowds, referencing the Atlanta Hawks and the NFL stadiums that they play in. So drawing a long bow, I would say, some of this social media advertising, and yet to grab me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to tackle it. I think it's going to be very hard for them to, by what we see already, to sort of get the interest that they're potentially going to need. Like, for example, I think this is less about the courses and about golf and more about the competition. But I'm not sure if they see that. So for me, and they're probably making it harder for themselves in terms of the courses, because they're all completely made up courses. There's no context as a viewer. Like, you don't know how hard a course plays. It's not a course you see play or you can play. So you don't have that additional context. And so we're seeing guys play courses that we have no context in. So the only context you have is the fact that they're competing against each other. And then also the slow pace. Like, we're going to be seeing a shot every sort of 30, 40 seconds. How is that entertaining for anybody?
Now you're really sounding like a, PGA Tour troll saying there's no context. can't understand what it means without context. Remember all those criticisms of Liv lacking context. Yeah, it hasn't grabbed me yet. I remember I was excited when I first saw the concept of shot makers. I was excited to sit down and watch that, and I got bored of that very, very quickly. Now, obviously, you're kind of talking semi-professional or trick shot artists playing in shot makers, so it's a different caliber. I get that. But I just wonder how long it's going to be able to keep people, whether it can grab people's attention firstly, and how long can you hold it for?
That's an important part. Here's the other thing I think, which is going to be very difficult for them, right? So in terms of production costs, this is incredibly high production costs, mostly because of the talent that they've got. So it's not cheap to have a Rory McIlroy or a Tiger Woods, but you've got like, what is it, 4? So you've got sort of 8. Each event is going to have 8 players that are paid pretty well. So the production costs are going to be high. So they're going to have to maintain huge numbers in terms of sponsorships and viewerships. Because if they don't, we're going to see it's going to sort of implode on itself, because the top guys, Rory's not going to want to turn up if he's not getting paid a bucket load.
Totally. And I mean, you compare that to, say, another Breaking 50 video, which Bryson's just released with Tom Brady.
Yep.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that video, that YouTube video, gets a ton more views than what a episode of the TGL would cost. And then you look at the production cost versus the return. And they'd be better off just broadcasting Bryson's Breaking 50 on their channel.
Yeah, that probably could actually. That would be good for Bryson, because the one thing with YouTube is, and all social, all modern media, is that they're probably not as valuable as like the broadcast or the TV media is. So there's sort of like that cabal that keeps prices high, because advertisers are willing to spend, because they got to spend in big numbers. So that's where TV and that is good for them, because they can spend loads and get some sort of return on it without it being sort of right in front of you, the viewership. There's no sort of direct sort of return. So they can sort of justify that. But when you're sort of looking at social media, you can see that direct ROI straight away for them. So the whole platform seems to be, you spend a little bit less on YouTube advertising and whatnot. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It still makes sense for like a Bryson potentially to get on TV maybe as well.
I agree.
Events this week. So we've got the Saudi event in the final international series event there. So that's going to be interesting. That should be. Have you seen the field yet for that?
I haven't seen the field. When I was looking earlier, I don't think it had been released. So we're recording Monday lunchtime. They're probably still waiting for some final entrants to come on through.
The Hero World Challenge, as we discussed, the Nedbank Golf Challenge over in South Africa at Sun City. So that'll be interesting. The fields.
I've always enjoyed that event, actually.
Yeah, it is a good one. Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll see Gary Player running around there doing push-ups or something on the opening tee. There's no opening tee shot, no ceremonial tee shots at his event. It's just 100 push-ups for everybody.
So we see Homer. Is this the event he's defending? Did he win this last year?
He did win this last year. That's right. So at Sun City there, $6 million purse. So decent bit of coin on offer, and pretty unique setting over there at Sun City, almost like in a safari park at times, where you just see the wildlife gracing the surrounds of the course. So, and it's also always a good viewing window for us here in Australia. So definitely one that I can get behind, and decent field, as you were saying, sort of Zalatoris, Corey Connors, Homer coming to defend, Mac Hughes, and our 2 most recent winners in Australia in terms of Elvis Smiley and Ryggs Johnston.
Yep. Just going back to that Saudi International, there is a big contingent of live guys there. So DJ's playing. Harold Varner, Graham McDowell, Abe Answer, Hatton, Cam Smith, Pooge, Moronk, Patrick Reed, Burmester, Neiman, Herbie.
This feels like it's almost part of their contract that they've got to play, right?
Yep, it does. They're pretty much mostly there. I don't think to see any of. I don't think Rahm's not playing, Koepka's not playing, but the vast majority of the Live guys are there this week. So that's also in a good viewing window for us.
Good viewing window, and maybe we should get on board some of the Stingers boys to take this one out, given that their form's trending from last week.
It certainly is. It certainly is. That you're probably right. Are you taking Burmester?
No, I'm going to take Louis.
Okay, I'm taking Burmy then. All right.
Hi, South African.
Hi, South African. Yep.
Yeah, you're on Burmy. I'll be on Louis.
Yep. That's it. I think that's it for the week, Luke.
That's it. Thanks for everyone for listening. We'll catch you again next week.
Thanks for tuning in.